I never liked driving at night. The darkness seemed to swallow everything, leaving only the narrow beam of my headlights to guide me through the abyss. But that night, I had no choice. I had to get home before dawn, and the only road that would take me there wound through miles of desolate countryside. As I drove, my grip tightened on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. I glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, and I still had hours to go. Suddenly, something caught my eye on the side of the road, a figure standing in the darkness, waving for help. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a risky move to pick up a hitchhiker in the middle of nowhere, especially at this hour. But something about the way they stood there, alone and vulnerable, tugged at my conscience. I pulled over, rolling down the window just a crack. "You need a ride?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure stepped closer, revealing a young woman with long dark hair and a pleading expression. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I just need to get to the next town. My car broke down, and I've been walking for hours." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door and she climbed in, offering a grateful smile. As she settled into the seat beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me like a shroud. We drove in silence for a while, the only sound the soft whir of the tires on the pavement. I stole glances at the woman beside me, her features illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard lights. There was something about her that seemed off, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Suddenly, she turned to me, her eyes glinting in the darkness. "Thank you for stopping," she said, her voice low and husky. I was starting to think I'd be stuck out here forever. I forced a smile, my heart pounding in my chest. "No problem," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just trying to help out a fellow traveler." But as the miles stretched on, my unease only grew. The woman beside me seemed to radiate a strange energy, her presence filling the car like a suffocating fog. And the further we drove, the more I began to suspect that something was seriously wrong. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but every instinct in my body screamed at me to pull over and let her out. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. What if she was telling the truth? What if she really was just a stranded traveler, looking for a ride? As we neared the next town, the woman beside me grew increasingly restless. She fidgeted in her seat, her eyes darting nervously around the car. And then, without warning, she reached out and grabbed the steering wheel, wrenching it sharply to the side. I cried out in alarm as the car swerved off the road, crashing through the guardrail and careening down a steep embankment. The world spun around me in a blur of motion and darkness, the sound of twisting metal and shattering glass filling my ears. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The car came to a jarring halt at the bottom of the embankment, the engine sputtering and smoking. I sat there for a moment, dazed and disoriented, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Beside me, the woman sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on me with a predatory gleam. And as the realization dawned on me, cold dread washed over me like a wave. She wasn't human. She was something else, something ancient and malevolent, lurking in the darkness, waiting for unsuspecting travelers to stumble into her trap. I scrambled out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest as I stumbled up the embankment and back onto the road. And as I glanced back over my shoulder, I saw her standing there in the darkness, watching me with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through to my soul. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out beneath me, never once looking back. And as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, I knew that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. But I also knew that somewhere out there, she was still waiting, biding her time until the next unsuspecting traveler came along. And as long as there were lonely roads and dark nights, she would always be out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim her next victim.